All right, good evening, everyone. I will call our meeting to order. Welcome to the Winter 2026 Stated Meeting of the Presbytery of the Cascades. I'm Margaret Mitsuyasu, your moderator for the 25-26 program year, and I'm very glad to be with you tonight. Thank you for taking the time and making the effort to join us today. So as our Presbytery's mission statement says, we are a community that is committed to cultivating spirit-led collaborative ministries that embody God's spirit, God's love in Jesus Christ. So we will do our best to strive to live up to that today. Though this is a virtual meeting of the Presbytery, it is being hosted at the Presbytery office in Portland, which is located on the traditional homelands of the Chinook, Cowlicks, Clackamas, Kalapuya, and Aftalati people, whose relationship with this land continues to this day. If you know the names of the First Nations for your current location, I invite you to add those in the chat now as well. Right. We offer gratitude for the land and for all of those who have stewarded it for many generations. Let us begin with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we come together carrying a lot: hope and concern, gratitude and weariness, and questions about the world and about our church. In a time that feels somewhat unsettled and complex, we ask for your steady presence among us. Slow us down enough that we may listen well to you, to one another, and to the voices we might otherwise miss. Shape our conversations with humility and courage, and guide our decisions toward faithfulness, justice, and care for all of your people. We offer this time to you, trusting that your Spirit is already at work. Amen.
Mhm.
So we would now like to welcome any first-time commissioners. So if this is your first time attending a Cascades Presbytery meeting as a ruling elder commissioner, please go ahead and wave at your screen so we can say hello. Is there anyone today? I see a few. So welcome. We are really grateful for your service to both your congregation and our presbytery. So thanks for joining us today. And since our last meeting, we have also welcomed a few new minister members to our community as well. So Roger Rice, who is retired, Craig Roberts, who is also retired, and John Yu, who is the associate pastor at Columbia Presbyterian Church in Vancouver. So welcome. Welcome to all of you as well. We are looking forward to serving as colleagues with you. We also welcome all presbyters, that is ministers and ruling elders, who are a part of other presbyteries, synods, or other church councils to this meeting. So presbytery custom allows the seating of these visitors as corresponding members, which grants them voice but not vote in our proceedings for this meeting. I will ask the clerk if we have been notified of any individuals who wish to be seated as corresponding members at this meeting of the presbytery. Clerk?
Thank you, moderator. I am aware of a few. The Reverend Jenny Bales from the Presbytery of San Jose is here. She's moved into our boundary within our geographical bounds, and we hope someday she'll find the time to complete the application and join us. We also know that the Reverend Ron Werner from Together Lab is here, and also presenting tonight from the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition is Alyssa Walker Keller, who is a coordinator with them. And I wanted to point out that we should also welcome a few folks who are here because they are inquirers hoping to advance to candidacy, and that's Laura Fuller and Matt Heisler.
Excellent, thank you. Is anyone aware of any others who is here that we should seat as a corresponding member?
Is my mic on, I think?
Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
So I just retired here back to Vancouver, Washington, and it's Sue Kime. So
Hi, Sue. Welcome.
hi.
Good to see you.
Margaret.
Are there any others to be seated? All right. Is there any objection to seating those we have just named as corresponding members for this meeting? If so, you may unmute and say objection. Is there any objection? Okay, without objection, it is so ordered. Welcome to our corresponding members. We are glad to have you with us today as well. Thank you for being here. All right, now, as I heard a few people talking and before we officially began the meeting, if you or the meeting host have not yet done so, I invite everyone to take a moment now to ensure that you are using our virtual meeting naming conventions. And I will invite our stated clerk, Paul Bells-Templeman, to review the instructions for how to do that and to share a few other logistics about our time together today, which includes a motion for updating our process for seeking recognition during the meeting. Paul.
Thank you, moderator. I think our first task is just to go over the naming convention and how to change your name in the Zoom platform. So do we have a slide for that somewhere? So the first thing is just that you have your name, I guess, right. You would type your name, and then after that, either a ruling elder, teaching elder, or guest. And then if you have a church or a committee or you're retired, you can use those designations. That's what we're looking for. So to do that, if you don't know how to do that, the next slide might help us a little bit. So one way to do it, there are several ways to do this, but one way is to move your cursor down to the bottom and click on participants. And then when you click on participants, your name should come up. So if the name was Cascades Presbytery, you would hover over to the right side with your cursor over the red camera that's being blocked. And there's the 3 dots. So click on the 3 dots and it should come up with a rename. Click on rename and then type your name, whether you're a teaching elder, ruling elder, or a guest, and then your role, your church, your role, and so on. All right. Hopefully that's clearer than mud. The next thing is new business will be processed soon. And one of the ways, or the way we will do new business is if you have new business in a virtual meeting like this, you would want to use the chat. And in the chat, you can type in new business in capital letters, or hopefully make it clear. Hopefully we won't have a lot of traffic in chat. And then type the actual motion that you're going to present in new business. So I guess I should back up a little bit and explain the process and form for submitting new business or amendments. So if you look in chat, if you have an amendment to a motion, you could type in amendment and then type in your amendment. So for instance, I might want to insert blue before chair if we have a motion on buying a chair for the stated clerk, because blue is my favorite color. So you can see, if you look in the chat, perhaps you'll see that I've put in amendment, insert blue before chair. Fortunately, there's no motion pending right now, so my amendment is not in order at this time, and hopefully won't be the rest of this meeting. All right, so and don't forget to click enter. Thank you. Yes. So I've done this before where I have a motion or something that I put in chat and I forget to click the little paper airplane in the bottom right corner. So make sure you do that. Let's see. How to seek recognition in this meeting. We are going to propose a different way of seeking recognition, but currently under our rules, the way to seek recognition is to use the raise hand button, which is found under the React on the bottom of the screen. I think there's a slide for that. Sorry, Danny. Let's see. So you can see that there are multiple different emojis you can use, and one is in the far left corner is clapping hands, which stays up for about 10 seconds. But if you click the raise hand button at the bottom, it stays up until it's lowered. So you click the raise hand button, and then we'll know you would like to speak, and you wait until the moderator calls on you, and then you can unmute and be recognized. That's all I have in terms of that. Moderator, would you like me to move forward? It seems like you were asking me about this meeting standing rules. Can I make that motion?
Yes, please go ahead. I will
Okay.
recognize the stated clerk to bring forth a motion as well.
All right. 1 second. Something happened to my, oh, I know why, because I was.
So our stated clerk is currently going to moderate model how to present a motion in the chat feature. So we'll give him just a second while he types that in.
I had it ready to go, but then I typed something else in the motions. All right. So, moderator, I move to amend the electronic meeting standing rules 13 and 14 as shown in Part A of the stated clerk's report.
Second.
I believe I put it in the chat. Does everyone see it in the chat?
No.
Ah, I know why I don't see it. If you were in the waiting room right now and showed up late, you would have seen that motion. Okay. That's hilarious. So we're going to have a little grace tonight if you don't quite understand, know what we're doing. I'm sort of okay, let's try that. All right. For those who are not in the waiting room, who came to the meeting on time, you can see that the motion is to amend the electronic, and not meeting, but meeting standing rules, numbers 13 and 14, as shown in Part A of the stated clerk's report.
Excellent. Thank you, stated clerk. Now, this is not coming from a committee or a commission, so it does require a second. Is there a second?
Second.
I see a couple of raised hands and heard, so thank you. So the motion on the floor is now to amend our electronic meeting standing rules, numbers 13 and 14, item number 13 and 14, as it is shown in Part A of the stated clerk's report. So that is what is currently on the floor. And since we have not yet officially adopted this proposal for seeking recognition, there are two ways you may do so. You may still simply seek recognition by raising your digital hand, though I would certainly welcome and appreciate any indication of your intent for speaking in the chat as well, as has been proposed, or as has been proposed in the amendment. To seek recognition, you will type just straight into the chat in the way you wish to speak. So if you wish to speak in favor of a motion, you would type for. If you speak against the motion, you would say type against. To request more information about the motion or parliamentary process, you would type inquiry. And to make a motion, as just demonstrated by our stated clerk, you would type motion followed by the text of your motion. So to speak you may either at this point, you may raise your digital hand or type for, against, inquiry, or motion. So I see we have some indication for those who wish to speak, and I will acknowledge, let's see, we've got two different ones here. I will start with Scott Buck. As you may unmute and begin your remarks, and as you do, please remember to introduce yourself by saying your name, your ecclesial office, so whether you're a ruling elder or teaching elder, and your church or your elected office in the presbytery. So, Scott.
Scott Buck, ruling elder, Chapel by the Sea, Lincoln City. I'm just voting for the motion. I have no comments.
Okay.
I see an inquiry in the chat.
All right. So for clarity, when you type in the chat, it is to seek recognition, to speak. It is not your vote. I see an inquiry from stated clerk Paul Bells Templeman. I will recognize Paul. Please state your inquiry.
Thank you, moderator. I have a question for the clerk. I'm wondering, and maybe you already pointed this out. So if we're going to vote for or against, we wait for the actual vote, but this is just to seek recognition so that we know, is it right that if we do it this way, we'll be able to alternate people that want to speak for and against. And if somebody has a motion such as to move the previous question or something like that, we'll be able to pick that up in the chat rather than having to ask people what they're doing. Did I get that right?
Indeed it is. I will let the stated clerk speak to that as well. And I do recognize that I forgot to invite the stated clerk, the maker of the motion, to speak to the motion before we entered into debate. So, stated clerk, would you like to speak to your motion and answer the inquiry on the floor?
Moderator, I'd like to address the inquiry and say the previous speaker was entirely correct.
All right, I see a number of people that have indicated a willingness to speak for the motion in the chat. I don't see anyone who wishes to speak against it. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against this motion or has another inquiry? Okay, I will then call on Sabrina Lett, who wishes to speak for the motion. You may unmute and please remember to introduce yourself.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we were just voting.
Ah, okay. All right, so I see the last item in the chat is an inquiry from Paul. If you wish to speak for or against the meeting or have another reason to speak, why don't you re-enter your request you're into the chat at this time? Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this motion? Okay, I don't see anyone else seeking recognition, so I believe we are ready to proceed to the vote. And so we will be voting on the motion to amend the electronic stated meeting rules number 13 and 14, as shown in Part A of the stated clerk's report, which outlines ways that we seek recognition during the meeting.
Going like,
All right.
Is there somebody wishing trying to speak?
hurts like hell.
Margaret, you're muted. There you go.
Okay, I got it. Because this motion, so the motion on the floor, since I don't see anyone else seeking recognition, I believe we're ready to move to the vote. The motion on the floor now is to amend this electronic meeting standing rules number 13 and 14, as shown in Part A of the stated clerk's report, which would change the way we practice seeking recognition to speak in our electronic meetings. Because this is a rule, we're amending a rule that is related to parliamentary procedure, the motion requires a 2/3 vote for approval. So in just a moment, we are going to officially vote, and we are going to vote using a Zoom poll, which will appear on your screen. So those of you who wish to vote in favor of the motion to adopt the new rules will click yes. Those who wish to oppose the amendment and keep the rules we already have will vote no. And then after you have made your selection, please be sure to click the submit button at the bottom of the poll. So will the tech team please display the poll? All right, please make your selections and click submit at the bottom. All right, the poll will be closing in just a few seconds. So if you have not yet made your selection, please do so swiftly. And we will now close the poll. I will invite the stated clerk to declare the number of votes for and against.
Moderator, there are 135 votes in the affirmative and 4 in the negative.
Oops, thank you. That meets the threshold of 2/3. And so the motion is adopted and our standing rules for electronic meetings are amended. Thank you, clerk, for your efforts to ensure our digital meetings proceed relatively smoothly and with as little confusion as possible, and for thinking through the details for appropriately implementing those plans. Okay, so now as we move into the business portion of the meeting, let's take a moment now to make sure that everyone knows how to seek recognition. We want everyone to be able to participate if you wish, and so we want to make sure you know how to indicate that you wish to do so. So now, with our newly adopted standing rules, to seek recognition, which is to speak or propose an action, in this meeting, you will now type your purpose for seeking recognition into the chat. So not to vote, but only when you wish to speak. So if you wish to speak in favor of a motion, you will type for. If you wish to speak against a motion, you would type against. If you wish to request information either about the motion that we are discussing or about parliamentary procedure in general, you may type inquiry. And then if you wish to make a motion, including an amendment, you would type motion followed by the text of your motion, which would include a call for the question or ending debate. So summary, 4 things if you wish to speak. Type for, against, inquiry, or your motion with the text of your motion. So just putting it in the chat is not your actual speaking it aloud. That is just to indicate to me, your moderator, how you wish to speak so that I can invite people to speak according to how they've indicated. So we can balance our discussion between for and against and make sure that we don't miss any questions along the way. There are a few special instances when you can interject without being recognized by the moderator first, and these are called interrupting motions. And they are for items like a point of order, which is when you think we have made an error in following the rules of our own process, or an objection. For example, if you object to an item on the consent agenda and you want it removed, or if I call for a vote and say if there is no objection, then the motion is adopted. You can either type into the chat objection, or you may unmute and simply say objection. At that point, I would pause our business and then invite you to explain your interrupting motion further. So if you do not have one of those special points of order or an objection, one of our interrupting motions, then you do need to follow the process for seeking recognition that we've just outlined and wait to be recognized by the moderator. That's me, before you may speak. And then when I do call on you, again, please remember to introduce yourself by stating your name, your ecclesial office, whether you're a ruling elder or teaching elder, and your church or your elected office in the presbytery. So 3 things. For example, Joe Smith, ruling elder, First Presbyterian Church of Redmond, or Don Lee, teaching elder, or Pat Hernandez, ruling elder, nominating committee. It's also the custom in our meetings for you to address your comments to me, the moderator, rather than to the body, and to refrain from speaking about referring to other members of the body by name. Okay, so our next item of business is to adopt our consent agenda, which includes the docket for this meeting. The consent agenda is found in the stated clerk's report on pages 3 and 4 of the background papers, and the docket itself is found on page 2. A consent agenda combines any items of business that are not expected to be controversial or need discussion into a single motion. It's a way of speeding up our process a little bit. There is no debate or discussion about the consent agenda, but if there are any items on the consent agenda that you think do require discussion or correction, or if you wish to vote against any of the items, you may request that that item or items be removed from the consent agenda, and then we will take them up at a later point in the meeting. Any item that is not removed from the consent agenda will be adopted, and by not removing them for further consideration, you therefore consent to their approval, hence the name. So today's consent agenda has 5 items on it, and if you wish to remove any of those 5 items, please type objection in the chat, and I will call on you to indicate which item you wish to remove. And as we learned, don't forget to hit enter or return, and be sure you're putting it into the whole group chat. So are there any objections to items of the consent agenda? Any items you wish to remove? All right, seeing none and no one seeking recognition, and with no items thus having been removed, all items on our consent agenda will be adopted. They are adopted by general consent. All right, we have now reached the time to introduce our new business. So items of new business are motions that you wish the presbytery to take specific action on. The presbytery does have a standing rule that says that new business will ordinarily be referred to a committee unless 2/3 of the presbytery body present agrees to discuss it at a later point in that meeting. So in order to introduce new business, you must submit your proposal to the stated clerk in the chat with the preface "new business" as Paul described for us earlier. Stated clerk, have you seen any new business?
Moderator, I have not.
Okay, there being no new business, we will continue with our agenda. All right, we will now receive greetings and hear a brief report from our ecumenical partner Together Lab, along with the Portland Immigration Rights Coalition, and the Reverend Chris Dela Cruz, Director of Youth Initiatives for Together Lab and a member of our presbytery, along with Reverend Ron Werner, Co-Director of Together Lab, and I believe a minister in the ELCA, and Alyssa Walker Keller, from the Portland Immigrants Rights Coalition, will present. I invite the three of you to unmute and present your report. Welcome.
Thank you for this time together. I'll pass it on to Alyssa to start, and I'll get up the presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Walker Keller, coordinator at the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition, PIRC. For those of you who don't know us, we're actually a statewide organization, despite our name, providing support to the immigrant community around rapid response, information about their rights, and coordinate both our 24-hour hotline on statewide, as well as providing support on the ground near the ICE facility at McAdam for folks who need to do check-ins there. I'm just here to share with you a little bit about the context that we find ourselves in here in Oregon at this moment, and then I'll pass to my colleague Ron to share a little bit from Together Lab. So next slide, please, Chris. So an important thing that we think that we always want to start the conversation by setting the table of what is happening. And so, as I'm sure many of you have been tracking in the news, immigration enforcement is way up. And specifically in Oregon, we experienced a really heavy surge of agents detaining people in Oregon from October to December. We saw 1,066 detentions reported to the hotline from July until December 31st. An additional 77 have been reported since January 1st. We saw a major drop in the number of detentions being reported to us this past month. We believe that's because they've surged the majority of agents in immigration customs enforcement to Minnesota. And we also, if you are following the news at all, were who they were planning to come for next with those skills that they had just learned. We heard a report out yesterday from an official in the White House who said Oregon's next. So whether or not they will continue with that plan now that things have been slowed down a little bit on the national level is anyone's guess, but we're preparing. We did see an increase in activity in the Willamette Valley specifically this week in Salem and also in Eugene. Next slide, please. So I like to show this just to give kind of a little bit of a visual of what we talk about when we say detentions. This one is zoomed in on the metro area. I know that many of you are statewide, and that statewide map might be more useful. But we have noticed that because they are using different kinds of technology to track immigrant community members, that they tend to enforce in specific areas. And so they're using technology like license plate readers, surveillance methods that have been learned from other militaries around the world. And as you can see, they tend to cluster in certain areas. So Washington County particularly was hit really, really hardly in that 3-month period that I was mentioning to you. I think that we saw something on the order of 372 detentions in Washington County reported to the hotline since July. So it's a lot of detentions. Next slide, please. So we tried to do an end of year report. For context, PIRC has been around for 20 years, but we've only been an organization for the last 3. And so what you're looking at here is what the data we've collected since we've been able to collect data since we had staff, which is late spring, early summer this year. And you'll see the same thing that I mentioned here, a huge spike in October and November and a little bit of a drop in December of detentions happening. And just to be really clear, when I talk about detentions, these are much more like kidnappings Typically, it's either people in masks and plainclothes or people in tactical gear coming and yanking people out of their vehicles, out of their homes, with very little like communication to the family members afterwards. They're being denied access to due process and counsel, and they're being spirited out of our community into detention centers and often shipped around the country. And the impact that has is leaving families with small children without their breadwinners. We're really concerned, honestly, about an eviction crisis coming in the next little bit here, because with, as you can see, nearly 900 community members polled in the last 3 months, we anticipate a lot of households that lost their breadwinner may not be able to afford rent very soon. Next slide, please. We also tend to see detentions happening in the early morning. So just to give you kind of a context, when people are headed to work or to school. And I think that that really shows like the narrative that's being put out about our immigrant community members, about them being a drain on society, is really inaccurate. And I think that showing the fact that like they're detaining people when they're going about their lives, when they're going to work, when they're going to school, really flies in the face of that concept that they're going after the worst of the worst. These are people just going about their daily lives, trying to make a living like any of us. Next slide, please. And as you can see also, we see a lot of people being detained in vehicles. So the out in community is kind of a vague, could be in a vehicle, could just be on the street. We see people being detained at stores and restaurants. We see people being detained at immigration check-ins, and even as they're leaving jail, which is a violation of our sanctuary promise law here in Oregon. But a grand majority of people are literally just in their vehicles on their way about their lives. And what ends up happening is they will surround a vehicle with their vehicles, break the window, pull the person out. And then we're kind of all left to put together the pieces of like whose vehicle this was. We match that with a report of somebody who's called and said that their family member is missing, and help people find that vehicle before it gets towed, so they don't lose not only their vehicle, but also their loved one. Next slide, please. So some key things that we're also tracking are the fact that these agents, this is not law enforcement as usual. These are people who have been minimally trained and are functioning essentially as a militia at the will of the federal government. That's left to kind of chaotic scenes, like for instance, the shooting and detention of 2 Venezuelan Oregonians recently, which has left our entire Venezuelan asylum-seeking community in terror and unwilling to leave their homes. And of course, like I mentioned, we're also hearing that the DHS has been planning to bring the same strategy that they employed in Minnesota, the huge surge of agents and really violent tactics, to Oregon. And I just want to reiterate, they are not here to keep us safe, but we can keep each other safe. We protect one another. And I really believe that that's like in call with our calling as people of faith, to care for the stranger, to welcome the newcomer, to love our neighbor, and to care for one another. And that's very much what we read in the New Testament. Next slide, please. And this is just a little bit of information about places where we're finding hope, whether it's the number of people who've reached out, who have come to our center. We had a vigil right after the murder of Renee Macklin Good. Almost 1,000 people attended that. And we did that in coordination with our partners here on the call, Chris and Ron from Together Lab. It was really encouraging to see people each adding their own light, their own personal strength to this movement. And I really believe this is a moment where we can come together and build the kind of community that we want to live in and want to grow our children up in. And I'll pass to Ron here. I believe this is the end of my slides. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with you all.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa, so much for all the ways that you show up in the world. And, I've been drawing a lot on some of the writings of Quaker Daniel Hunter, who's an incredible community organizer, movement strategist. And one of his lines from this past year has been, to not take the time to grieve would be a strategic error. And so I invite you wherever you are right now to just put your feet on the ground and to take a deep breath and to just notice what's coming up in your body, even as you hear those stats and see these slides. I know for me, it's sobering to always just see the reality of what has come to Oregon in all the different ways that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is operating. What is giving me strength and hope is being on calls like this, alongside so many familiar faces, a fabric of trust that extends beyond this moment. I'm here today, Reverend Ron Werner. I'm an ELCA pastor, but I was baptized in First Presbyterian Church, Oceanside, New York. And I was on staff for several years alongside Stephen Koski and Jenny Warner at Bend First Presbyterian Church. And so this is part of the circle that has also raised me to be a leader in this work. And today I'm invited by another community of Presbyterians who have been showing up. When we saw the first tick of immigration enforcement at the federal courthouse and at that ICE processing facility in Southwest Portland, we began a clergy presence program. So alongside legal observers and alongside rapid response lawyers, we began 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 Monday through Friday shifts at both facilities, training clergy to be a public presence, to help be a deterrent, a de-escalator, to help increasingly violent agitators and ICE officers to second guess their orders, to be a caring presence as movement chaplains for lawyers and people who have been working around the clock, and to be a moral presence. Unlike legal observers whose role is to be neutral, for us, we can dig from the depths of our faith traditions to call forth a different kind of future, a different world that we want to live in, one according to our values. So I want to give a shout out to Susan Tyndall and Heather Hellman and Eric Clark and Chris Voss Rothmeyer and Lori Newman and Josh Dunham, who have all been a part of that clergy presence program since August. And I'm proud to report that since we began that program, there have been zero or next to zero detentions at the federal courthouse, which is very different in other states and was very different from what we were seeing beforehand here in Oregon. Another special shout out to this fabric of trust to Reverend Kelly Wadsworth, who was a key consultant for us when the National Guard were being threatened to come. With her experience in the military, being able to help with messaging and being able to help us figure out how might we meet that particular moment when we were under threat, when Oregon was being made out to be a military target. So I want to say thank you. If you are interested in being a part of that clergy presence program at the end of this, I will put my email in the chat. But one of the questions we keep getting is, what can we do to meet this moment? How can we make sense of what is happening, and how do we show up? So Chris, if you'll go to the next couple of slides, we can go past who is Together Lab and who are our people. And I want to offer something from a group called Protect Oregon. It's a statewide coalition that we're a part of. And these folks were key leaders in the moment when the National Guard was being threatened for deployment. And one of the key frameworks that we're trying to understand are authoritarian movements or democratic backsliding, and how they've functioned in different countries, and how what we're seeing here with ICE as a kind of paramilitary organization that is has a budget 3 times the size of the Marines. Like, how do we make sense of this? Next slide, please. So what is the authoritarian threat? When we're talking about that, what are we talking about? Direct investigations against critics. Chris, go ahead. Give license to lawbreaking, regulatory retaliation, deploy military domestically, federal law enforcement overreach, and the autocrat won't leave. These are some of the hallmarks of what we're talking about when we talk about authoritarianism. And researchers took 35 cases of democratic backsliding from 1991 to 2021. And what they noticed in all of those is the predicted probability of stopping that backsliding towards authoritarianism with no civil resistance movement, and this is in the next slide, there's a 7.5% chance of stopping the authoritarianism from being made more permanent. And with a civil resistance movement, so folks who are willing to not comply in advance, or who are willing to stand up to that authoritarian threat, there's a 51.7% chance of countering the authoritarianism. So it's good news, but it's also sobering news. Authoritarian governments, as they've studied in these 35 cases, rely on what are called pillars of support. Next slide, please. So you have this case where those at the top, they don't actually live in our neighborhoods anymore. And so in order to enact these policies, in order to deploy ICE, in order to retaliate, they require pillars of support. You'll see civil service, police, military, media, faith communities, we're one, labor and business, all can help prop up a government or a regime or an authoritarian government. Next slide, please. And if you look at, the cross section of a pillar, if one of these was a tree and you cut down to try to understand the rings, at the center, you might have the CEO, who maybe doesn't live in the neighborhood quite as much as they used to live. Middle management, workers, consumers. But these are folks that can engage in moments of non-compliance. I'll give an example. We saw retaliation, regulatory retaliation related to Jimmy Kimmel, who was kicked off late night for some of the things that he was talking about. Well, all of a sudden, consumers started cutting the cord to their Disney Plus accounts. And workers, other actors said, I'm no longer going to work with Disney if this is how they're going to act, to cave under pressure. And over the course of 3 or 4 short days, eventually it got to the CEO, and that pillar, the media pillar, said, we are not going to comply with this. So we're seeing threats to universities, we're seeing threats to nonprofit status, all of this kind of stuff right now. Faith communities are a superpower in a ways, or we're a super pillar because we are both a pillar of support, but we are also one of the convening bodies that has all of the other pillars of folks that go to our congregations, where we already have a shared stake, where we're already connected to our neighbors and our neighborhood. The example of when the National Guard was announced, we were able to reach out to military chaplains to help us plan action. Something is threatening the business community, we're able to assemble business leaders in a moment's notice because we're already connected. We already have that fabric of trust. So what are these strategies to help make sure that these pillars of support are not propping up democratic backsliding, authoritarianism, and this escalating ICE presence like we're seeing in Minnesota? Here's what we know works in these 35 cases. So one, it's don't obey in advance. Next slide, please. What that means is when you're being threatened, hey, churches shouldn't speak out on this or we're going to lose our nonprofit status. We don't take the bait. We live into our values. 2, we prioritize joy. 3, we take up space. We practice solidarity. 4, which is not just about, it's about how we hold difference and build trust across that difference. And 5, we organize. It is said that this civil resistance movement of 51.7%, that what it requires is 3.5% of the population to be willing to not obey in advance together, to be willing to boycott if necessary, to be willing to strike, to be willing to take mass action together in a moment. What we've seen in Minnesota has been incredibly inspiring to me. And it was prepared in advance by mass groups of clergy and community organizations and labor groups who built trust with each other over the last 3 and 4 years. So when this moment came to them, they were able to have the trust amongst themselves to respond. And it's been incredibly inspiring and powerful to see. I'm going to close with this, which is an invitation to relationship. After the shooting of Renee Nicole Good and the shootings that took place, or the killing of Renee Good and the shootings that took place in Portland, Together Lab, we sent out an email to the clergy that we're connected to. including many of you here on this call. And in a week's notice, 250 clergy in Oregon responded to the call to come together to better understand how ICE is operating and what we might do together. There are now actions, creative actions being planned for Palm Sunday and our Jewish colleagues around Passover, and imagination being cultivated of a day of prayer and fasting together across our faith traditions. And yes, maybe some strikes on May Day and relationships being built between schools and congregations in a neighbor to neighbor fashion. Lots of powerful possibilities. But where we left that clergy call is we knew that it couldn't just start and end with clergy. It must include the folks in our congregations, everyday people coming together to build trust. And so we're having another call. On Thursday, February 12th, from 6 to 7:15 p.m., a briefing around how ICE is operating and what we might do as congregations across our faith traditions to respond to this moment in our neighborhoods, legislatively, and at scale, getting to that 3.5%, engaging that faith pillar so that white Christian nationalism does not become the pillar that holds up autocracy here. I'll put the Zoom link into the chat, and I'm grateful for the time here on this call with you all, and so grateful for all of the ways that each of you are already showing up in your communities. We're stronger together, and I'm honored to be in this with you all. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you to our guests for coming. We are running behind our agenda, so we don't have time for questions right now, but if our guests could put their contact information in the chat, perhaps people can follow up separately offline, and we will be sure to include the link and details for that training that was mentioned in our Presbytery newsletter shortly. So please keep an eye on your email inboxes for more information on that. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We are now going to move on to the next part of our business, which is we're going to hear from some of our strategic leaders on our big picture reports about the whole Presbytery's work. So we will hear from our Transitional Executive Presbyter, Brian Craker, and our Presbytery Leadership Commission. I believe Brian is going to start that right now.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Again, our thanks and appreciation to Ron, Chris, and Alyssa, and reminding us of what the connectional church looks like in real time. So thank you for that. I am going to shorten a bit of what I was going to share today because I want us to get closer back on time, because we've got something exciting coming. And that is the fact that we have two inquirers that are going to be sharing their statements of faith with us, Laura Fuller and Matt Heisler, and really excited for that. So we want to make sure we have enough time for both of them. But just a quick part of my report is just a reminder that we have gotten into our new PLC structure with having the executive board, a board that has the time and space to be able to work on pressing issues of our presbytery. And that team has been able to meet 5 times since it has been put together, as well as a retreat that we had this fall. And our advisory board has also been able to meet. That is the board that includes all of our team leaders and commission and team leaders to be there. And we've been able to have 3 of those meetings since July with that entire group. So it has been a very positive experience so far. Part of the work of the PLC is been geared towards 2 major foci this term. The first is part of the mission study phase of our transition as a presbytery, where we are gathering information and we're trying to identify what are the current and future needs of our churches and our ministers. Those surveys have gone out. All of you, if you are minister members, doesn't matter if you are active, CRE, at large, validated, or retired, hopefully you've received that survey from SurveyMonkey. We have had 104 of you that have filled out that survey since it went out just about less than 2 weeks ago. So I want to say a big thank you to all those of you who have done the survey already. We are leaving that survey up through Ash Wednesday. So if you haven't gotten a chance to do that yet, please get on there and do that. If you did not receive an email, unfortunately for many of you, SurveyMonkey may have dropped into your junk mail or spam folder. If it's there, go find it. If not, email me and I will get you a separate link that you can go ahead and get on, because we want to hear from all of our minister members. The more we hear from, the better information we're going to have to work with. So we greatly appreciate it. In addition to the minister survey that went out, we also had a congregational survey that went to all of our sessions. They were sent to the clerks of session and to whoever was the moderator of those congregations. And that is a compilation that's being done where we're asking questions from the session, from our current session elders, on what are you seeing in your current congregations? What are the things you're excited about? What are your biggest challenges? Talk to us. What's your connection with the presbytery? And that's something that's going to take a little bit longer. That survey is staying open through the end of March and does take a little bit of coordination. And Ann Montgomery is one of our PLC members that sits on the sub-team for this mission study group. She also serves as the clerk of session in Cottage Grove. And Ann, I'm wondering if you might be able to share with us, how is your session tackling the session survey that came out from the presbytery?
We're involved in so many projects right now that I wanted to give everyone a time to think about and respond individually first. So I sent that survey to everyone and asked everyone to enter responses in an email or to write them on a scan or print out or to call me, just to make it as easy as possible. So last night at our meeting, we reviewed the rationale, pretty much what you have just said. So our next meeting is 2 days before the survey answers are to be tallied up by the clerks. We settled on a deadline of the Friday before that, so I will have time to collate their responses and make a draft of those answers at that point. And that is what I'll share at our meeting for us to have a longer discussion about in February. And so I hope that the responses I send in then can reflect our feelings as clearly and honestly as possible. But I do think it's important to ask for individual reactions first. I think you can get some pretty honest responses then. So that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, that's what we've done so far.
Appreciate it, Ann. Thank you. Again, if you are a clerk of session or a moderator of a congregation and you did not receive the email that had those questions to give to your elders to work on as a session, please email me directly and I will make sure to get that information to you quickly. Lastly, we have a second subgroup of the PLC that has been working on building trust. And Gail Black is going to come and share a report from that subgroup for us. Gail.
Thank you, Brian. In our congregations, most of our work, from planning a potluck to creating a yearly budget to discerning a new mission project to calling a new pastor, requires us to function in teams. In our wider work in the Presbytery commissions, task force, committees, requires us to function across layers of interests and experiences and perspectives. Our complex systems that support a commitment to doing the work of Jesus Christ requires our organization to work in a spirit of trust and love. When the executive board of the Presbyterian Leadership Commission met last September to begin our work as a new body, we spent many hours generating lists to assess the status of the presbytery and what we needed to know to guide the work. One of the key elements of a healthy organization is trust, and the board recognized that this is an important component to address in this time of reflection and change. Guiding our group is Amy Delaney with her experiences as exec in the North Puget Sound Presbytery, now a minister member of the Cascades, and serving on the PLC, along with Eric Clark, Chris Voss Rothmeyer, and I began an exploration of how to build and maintain trust. 2 books that have been helpful are The Thin Book of Trust by Charles Feltman and Stephen M.R. Covey's Speed of Trust. Our group reviewed the CART report and spoke to Brian Craker to learn of the past Presbytery reorganizations efforts. That goes way back. and their effects on relationships and resources. We talked with two Presbyterian executives who had rebuilt trust in their respective presbyteries, Dee Cooper from Denver Presbytery and Corey Schlosser Hall of North Puget Sound. They shared how important building relationships are for building trust. As our group processed this information, it became clear that we, the PLC, needed to create a covenant. Now, that's not a new idea, but we did not have one. So with considerable collaboration, we presented to our executive board a draft covenant that was adopted just last week. One of the 12 commitments reads, when addressing decisions on actions of the PLC to the Presbytery, we will communicate clearly and honesty and deliver on our commitments. Now, these are good words to begin with, but we know there is much more and much more complicated work to do. Now, trust can be elusive, hard to define, but we know when there isn't trust. Stephen Covey says that low trust is the greatest cost of life in organizations, resulting in hidden agendas, interpersonal conflicts, and win-lose thinking. So how do we build and maintain trust? Where do we start? Charles Feltman suggests that the best way to go from the concept of trust to the behaviors that support or damage it is to break the term trust down to specific domains to assess those behaviors or actions. Reading this material on trust, it opened for us the pathways to processes of building trust. And now on your screen, we're just going to review. Oh, okay. There are four domains of trust. So the first one is care. You have, describe this. You have my interests or our common interests in mind, as well as your own, when you make decisions and take action. We are in this together. And sincerity. You are honest and act with integrity. You say what you mean what you say, and what you do aligns with that. Reliability. You deliver on commitments you make to the best of your ability. You keep your promises. And one thing that Corey Schlosser Hall said when we were speaking with them, he said, when you're, as far as reliability, if you're going in the wrong direction, stop, change. Don't be afraid to stay, take a new path, and apologize if you need to. And competence, you have what is needed to do the job, the skills, the expertise, the experience, the capability, and resources. So in this update this evening, the Trust Subgroup wanted to bring you into this circle of our work thus far in building and maintaining trust in our presbytery. As our team moves forward, we plan to offer more information and guidance based on our conversations with you and the various committees. And Madam Moderator, I don't know if we have any time for any comments or questions. People may want to put them in the chat if they do. Two of our committee members, also subcommittee, and Amy Delaney is here, and here's her picture. And Chris Voss Rothmeyer is also present in this meeting. So anyone wants to?
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Gail. And then lastly, for my report, I just need to correct an erroneous statement that I made earlier. Thank you, Stephen Dietrich. I apologize. Our inquirers are sharing their statements of Christian experience, not their statements of faith. So I apologize for any confusion that may have caused. Madam Moderator, that concludes my report.
Excellent, thank you. As a reminder, of last summer, we adopted a new structure for our Presbytery Leadership Commission that is comprised of our three moderators, your current moderator, your moderator-elect, and your immediately past moderator, your four vice moderators for each of the regions, as well as 3 members at large that are elected directly by the body. And so we have compiled our pictures to help you remember who we all are as we serve in leadership. So we'll show those. And if there are any questions or comments that you have for Brian or for the PLC, please type inquiry or comment in the chats. Are there any questions for the group? Okay, thank you. We will now hear from those who provide ministry support and leadership to the ministry endeavors in our region. And we will begin with our advocate for congregations and clergy, Clark Sclera. So Clark, please unmute and share your report.
Excuse me, Madam Moderator.
Yep, 1 second.
Just a second.
Zane Buxton here. I had asked during this part of the report to give a brief comment on P&A stuff. Apparently that didn't get to you or Brian.
All right. Zane, please go ahead.
All right.
But please remember to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Zane Buxton, honorably retired minister, I think, and chair of the P&A committee of the Presbytery. And I just wanted to highlight something that grew out of the October meeting. The P&A committee had a significant discussion, and we are pursuing with the PLC executive committee and executive commission and the trustees changing our relationship with the stated clerk of the Presbytery to move it to a full-time position rather than an 80%. Discussions on several different places suggest it's very difficult, number one, to try to figure out how to be an 80% staff person. And we've had comments from other people that some folks probably weren't even aware that we were compensating Paul at 80% and trying to manage that. So the trustees are looking at it. The P&A are looking at it further, and the PLC executive committee. And I'm thinking we will be hoping to bring something to the April meeting of Presbytery to make a change. That's what I needed to provide people some background about our conversations that are going on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zane. For those who are less familiar with our acronyms, P&A stands for the Personnel and Administrative Commission of our Presbytery. So thank you. So that is information to be keeping an eye on your background papers for the next meeting, hopefully for further developments on that. Thank you, Zane. All right, now we will turn to Clark Sclera. So Clark, you are welcome to unmute and present.
Right. Thank you, Madam Moderator, and greetings, fellow members of the Presbytery of the Cascades. It is good to be with you this evening, even if it is from afar. I am the Reverend Clark Sclera, your advocate for congregations and clergy. And I'm pleased tonight to share with you that the pastors and congregations that make up this presbytery are persevering and demonstrating inspiring resolve, commitment, and creativity, even through challenging days. Over the past months since we last met, we continue to see an elevated number of churches going through pastoral transition. We currently have 12 churches on our website who have listed an open pastoral search, and another 8 who have listed other ministry-related openings, such as a youth director or a music director. In addition to these active searches, we have another 8 churches who are either in transition with an interim pastor already in place or are anticipating the departure of their current pastor in the coming months. So this number together represents roughly 1/3 of our churches that are experiencing or preparing for some kind of transition of key staff and leadership. While this is a significant number and percentage of our presbytery, I am also so proud of the resilience of our faith communities as they pull together, identify their core values and mission, and then step faithfully into the future, sometimes with creative solutions such as organizing mergers or considering pastoral shares that allow them to be in better fellowship and community with neighboring congregations while meeting the needs for leadership in our own churches. To support this kind of work throughout the presbytery, we have recently added the Reverend Robin Garvin as our COM team lead for transitions. And Robin brings a tremendous wealth of experience and resources to support congregations during this time that is marked by change. Likewise, we're actively exploring new patterns and resources for helping congregations meet these emerging transitional needs. In addition to that, we're also working closely with our counterparts in the Lutheran Synod that share our geography on ways that we can partner to train and equip transitional pastors and to broaden the resources that we have to support all of our various ministries in these moments. In addition to an increase in transitions, we're also continuing to experience increased leadership challenges for both churches and pastors. God's call to love and support our neighbors remains unchanged. And I am proud to say that the commitment of our churches, their members, and their pastors remains strong. We've been working with partners like PERC, who we heard from earlier. We've been maintaining ministries, feeding, housing, tending, accompanying, visiting, and healing God's children in a variety of settings across our region. What is changing, though, is the complexity and the sheer amount of and significance of the challenges that are confronting our churches. The demand to respond to constantly shifting dynamics and maintain a faithful public witness and meaningful ministry to our wider communities on an ever-tightening budget is significant, and it can feel overwhelming. There is fatigue and the risk of burnout if we do not stay in substantive fellowship with one another, or if we neglect the tending of our spirits and our connectedness to one another and to God. In an effort to bolster leaders in our presbytery for our work together, the COM has also formed a team to promote health and well-being amongst pastors. We have added the Reverend Kelly Dixon as our COM team lead for care of pastors. And in addition to providing direct care when pastors experience challenges in life, Kelly's also been organizing a team focused on developing infrastructure that supports pastors spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and vocationally. So if you are a pastor who could use some added support, if you're feeling lonely or isolated, or you know a pastor who is seeming a little bit worn down and weary, please give me a call so that we can get that person connected. Along these same lines, our wonderful moderator, our dynamic stated clerk, and our newly reformed and always reforming PLC have been working on even the ways we meet as a presbytery to help us better build community. And remember that even through our organization and our work, we are seeking to worship God and express our faith in ways that promote the life and activity of the Spirit in our midst. We hope that you can feel this shift in focus and approach, and that it is an encouragement to you as we co-labor in this gospel work that we have been given in this particular time and in this particular region. One additional area where we have supplemental resources for support for congregations and groups is resources for those who may be experiencing conflict. The Reverend Sarah Sanderson Dowdy has been serving as our COM team lead for conflict resolution and has helped establish and train our CART team. And I'm just exceedingly grateful to Sarah for this important work and to our CART team for their preparation and their willingness to enter into challenging spaces with people. And I'm even more grateful for the fact that we've actually seen a decrease in conflict throughout the presbytery and in congregations over the past year or so. So while I'm so grateful for the CART team, I am praying that they start to get bored. That being said, they do stand ready. So if you or a church or committee that you serve on or care about is experiencing challenges in your communal life, please know that there is a dedicated and trained group ready to support you with tools and resources to move honestly and fruitfully through contentious times so that you might grow in faith and relationship. So again, please give me a call or send me an email if you need to get connected to these resources. In closing, while these do really remain challenging days, there also remains much to give thanks for, not the least of which is you all. Thank you for being the faithful remnant in this region, for bearing with one another in love, for continuing on in your acts of service and compassion and public witness. Let's stay connected and live into the meaningful ministry God has called us to together. Madam Moderator, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. We really do appreciate the work you do to support our ministers and congregations in our region. If there are questions for Clark, you may please type inquiry or comment in the chat box. All right, thank you, Clark. We will now hear a report from the Warm Springs Commission, which I believe is going to be given by Beverly Crow. Beverly, if you may unmute and present.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know for a long time I've been coming and saying, oh, please help us. We need Sunday morning pastoral leadership for worship. And that is still true. And so I put that out there, but that's not my main message for today. If in fact you're not on my call list, and many of you are, let me know if you're able to preach and fill in for worship on a Sunday morning. But the news I want to bring is that the trustees team of architects has been working for a long time, I think longer than they thought it would take, to redo the manse and get it back up in good shape so that somebody could come and be called and live there. And within the week, I think they're going to say they can sign off and say that they have completed their work on the manse. And this is exceedingly exciting. It has taken them much longer than they thought. And it's like, hello, this is Warm Springs. And it's hard to get things done there that would not take nearly so long in the city or anything. And the architects, I don't know, I just want to spread their word. I did not know that the trustees had an architect team. They are so committed, so faithful, so diligent in their work and sharing their expertise that it's just amazing. And if you didn't know that, they won't tell you how much they do. So I want to spread the word of how excited we all are with their devotion and expertise in getting the manse to be just a wonderful living space right now. And I think by the end of this week, we'll say work done. So that's very exciting. I want to let you know that the church building, not the manse, but the church building, we may not have a pastor there and be open for business in that way, but the community is seeing our building, our church building, as a space for community. And so part of the fellowship hall is the community's food bank. And there are people in and out of the church a lot for food. The church does not provide all of the food. We're just providing the space, but it is the space for the community food bank. And so there's a lot of traffic in and out of Fellowship Hall during the week on that end. And then the other end of Fellowship Hall, in a new development, the church was approached by a preschool language group. And they are going to be using one end of the fellowship hall 5 days a week with preschoolers for language. So the community is in and out of the building a lot. And I think that's really exciting and wanted you to know that. Then the other thing that we have is that we are now at the place where the manse is finished. I think within a week we can say that. And Vancouver First has been collecting some furnishings. And I think maybe we'll wait a little bit more for snow time to pass, but then they're going to see that all of the furnishings that they have been gathering from a variety of places will get to Warm Springs, and we'll be able to say that the manse is ready for somebody to be able to live in it. So that's another really exciting development. And because we're at that place, I think we're ready to begin with the elders to start work on a mission study. And so it's all upbeat. It's been a long, long time. And some of us are growing weary of how long it's been, but it feels like we're turning corners that are pretty exciting. So wanted to put that out there for sure, that everybody knows about that. But in the meantime, until we do have the manse fully furnished and can do calling of a pastor, I still need to fill out my list for every Sunday morning. We need worship leaders, and some are coming as groups of church. It doesn't have to just be a solo pastor. It can be a group or any configuration that you want. But I know I hound some of you, and some of you I don't know well enough for me to hound you. And some you may be the fortunate ones, but why don't you give me a call and say that you could come out to Warm Springs? It won't be too long before you don't have to worry about snow and ice. And we have had to cancel a couple Sunday mornings because of that. But we do still need Sunday morning worship leaders until we can do our mission study. We're starting the mission study. And so moving along, it's all very exciting, and we're still going to need week by week pastor, preacher type folks. So I may be hounding people I know for return. If I don't know you well enough or I haven't hounded you, please feel free to call me. The energy at the church is really picking up, and people are so grateful for anybody who does come and lead worship. We're beginning work on a mission study, such as it will be, and so we're moving along. It's very exciting, and it still will be a long road before we get somebody in there. So I'll keep calling you, or you call me. We're going to need every Sunday somebody there to lead worship. But it's exciting right now. There is a turn and a movement, and people in the congregation feel it. They're feeling a little more upbeat. So that's my report. And
That's
thank you all for the work you do.
Yeah, lots of wonderful things to celebrate. Thank you. Still a ways to go, but so exciting to hear quite a number of of milestones reached. So if there are any questions, please indicate your wish to speak by typing inquiry in the chat. All right, we are still a little behind our agenda, but I do want to let us all take a break. So let us break for just 3 minutes now. Let's come back at 7:20. So we'll take a brief break and we'll reconvene at 7:20.
Oh, did you see that from Mark?
All right, welcome back, everyone. That was a quick break, I know, but I appreciate your flexibility there. We are now going to turn to our all of our reports related to the Presbytery's finances. I do see a quick note from the moderator of the trustee chair that there is a minor correction to the trustees, simply a correction of a spelling. So we will incorporate those into our receiving of those reports. I will now call on our treasurer, Dave Baca, to present the treasurer's report. His written report can be found at the beginning of page 10 in the background papers, and invite him now to unmute and present his verbal report. Dave.
Thank you, moderator. Maybe I can save us a few minutes here. The written report speaks for itself. There's one slide, if you flash it for me, I think. I just wanted to hit a couple of highlights for the report. First is these are only third quarter numbers or through November. They're not final, and so there are going to be a lot of changes. Really, you need to wait till the April Presbytery meeting for a real solid review of what we did during the year 2025. Next, I'm still working on a clarified presentation of categories and limits on our various funds and accounts, which we discussed at the last stated meeting in person. I want to say that the stated clerk, Paul Belts-Templeman and Zane Buxton, have done yeoman's work helping the chair of the board of trustees and I in doing a lot of the historical research necessary to do that. And a lot of that is done, but we still have to work on the presentation. The next slide. This is going to be a change per capita that the Presbytery charges each of us in our congregations is $50 a member, has been for a long time. And that along with giving are the primary recurring income sources, revenue sources for the Presbytery. In other words, this is what we call our income, and we never collect 100% of per capita. Some churches can't, some churches don't for a variety of reasons. So we have an allowance in the financials. This is in the weeds. I apologize for kind of bad debts, if you will, for per capita that doesn't get collected. So that's just the way we do things, and probably the way we'll do things for a while. Next slide, please. Out of that, we remit a substantial portion of both per capita and partnership giving to the GA to pay our share of GA expenses. And that's remitted whether we collect it or not. So we remit a certain amount per person, whether we are able to collect it or not from our members. And that, represents a little bit of a burden on us. Final slide, please. We, through the trustees and the executive board, have agreed to participate in a trial that the GA is running this year and next, in which they charge us not on a per capita basis, but as a percentage of our actual revenue. The percentage they suggested is, I believe, about 11%. That will, in those years, result in a savings to our Presbytery because the percentage of our revenues that we currently remit is in excess of 11%. So it'll be between $85,000 and $90,000 in the current year of actual savings. So that I just wanted to leave you with some good news. It's temporary. This is a trial by GA. They may or may not continue it going forward. The percentages could change, but for the next 2 years, we look like we're going to have a bit of a burden, a bit of it lifted from us. So those are the highlights of the report. Some of it's not actually in the report. The financials speak for themselves, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there questions for our treasurer? If so, please type inquiry in the chat. All right, I don't see any. Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate your work and attention to all of those details on our behalf, and for your exceptional ability to translate them into plain English for the rest of us. We are grateful. All right, we now get to turn our attention to the items that require our special attention and action this evening. Today, we have the joy of examining 2 inquirers for promotion to candidacy, and many thanks to them for their patience as we are a bit behind schedule today. I did want, as we are looking ahead toward the end of this time together, when assuming if we do eventually actually do vote to advance them to the status of candidate, when we bring them back after our vote and congratulate them, applause does not translate very well across Zoom. And so I thought that perhaps instead, why don't we consider at that time when invited, we can all type in the chat a note of encouragement or affirmation. So as we are listening to the presentations earlier and throughout the discussion, perhaps listen for specific items that you might be able to offer as affirmations or encouragement at that later point in our meeting. So with that, I will invite Stephen Dietrich, the chair of the Commission on Preparation for Ministry, or our CPM, to give the commission's report and to present our candidates. Stephen.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I all of a sudden lost my script somehow. There it is. For action, Matthew Heisler, Inquirer. On November 19th, 2025, the CPM, Committee on Preparation for Ministry, met with Inquirer Matthew Heisler and conducted an annual review. Additionally, after discussing his growth objectives and his progress, articulating and demonstrating the outcomes of inquiry, the CPM voted to approve the following motion. The CPM recommends and requests that the Presbytery of the Cascades, after hearing and interviewing him on this statement of Christian experience, enroll Matt Heisler as a candidate under care of the Presbytery. I so move.
I believe we are to present the. Okay, so that will be the motion that comes from the commission. But in order to act on that, the body will will hear a statement of Christian experience from the candidate, after which we will have an opportunity, to ask the person a question about their statement. So first, as we move toward that eventual decision, we will first hear the inquirer read their statement of Christian experience. Then we, the body, will ask the questions of their Christian experience. And then after 15 minutes of questions, we will excuse the inquirer to a breakout room and will officially have the motion on the floor to discuss and decide. After the vote, we will invite the person back and proceed forward based on the results from there. Are there any questions about the process so far? If so, please type inquiry in the chat. Okay, so to begin, we will hear the first candidate read their statement of Christian experience. So, and we have just heard Stephen introduce Matt Heisler. So I will invite Matt to unmute and read your statement of Christian experience.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'll just jump in. So I grew up in a Christian home and have had a faith in Jesus from a young age. I have an early memory when I was 4 or 5 of getting in trouble and being put in timeout, as everyone does. Now I'm doing that to my own 5-year-old these days. As my mom walked away, I cried, "I want Jesus," with tears in my eyes. Jesus was a refuge for me then, and he's still my refuge today. I experienced a strong and diverse religious education. I attended Catholic school from 1st to 5th grades. Then I was more a part of Pentecostal evangelical churches through my teenage years and early 20s. My adult faith, starting in college, has been characterized by lots of wrestling with God and with questions of faith, while also serving God and others through group home care for at-risk adolescents, something I started to do in college, special education with elementary students, youth ministry for years, and other congregational ministries. So some of my faith questions arose from difficult family experiences, like my father's grandiose narcissism, my parents' divorce, and the almost constant conflict at home. Sometimes angrily, I ask God, where were you in the midst of all of this? And in my college years, I found solace, particularly in the writings of the Scottish poet and pastor George MacDonald. One of his literary devices was the concept of an invisible thread that his fantasy characters, like those found in The Princess and the Goblin, would grab hold of and follow to freedom out of difficult situations. This became a life metaphor for me and a way of thinking about my faith in God, a fragile and sometimes hard to find thing that was always worth looking for and would lead me out of the difficult, dangerous, or dark places I found myself in. Other questions arose from difficult church experiences. When I began attending seminary and interned at an evangelical church plant, my friends eventually came to me with stories of being assaulted and abused by the church's lead and associate pastors. And I myself had experienced some dynamics of controlling and manipulative behaviors from the same folks. What was really hurtful for me was there were no real channels for accountability, as the church board was mainly a group of the pastor's personal friends and people he supervised professionally. So this sent me into a true crisis of faith as I questioned if I wanted to give my time and service to an institution that resembled control and fear and misrepresented the God of love I had come to put my trust in. But I was halfway through an MDiv and told God, this feels dead at this point. So if I'm still to serve in ministry, you'll need to resurrect it somehow. I followed the invisible thread from there and transferred to Princeton Seminary in 2019 to finish my degree. While there, I joined a spiritual direction group with a retired PCUSA pastor. This focused time of prayer and connection ended up being tremendously healing and clarifying for me. Soon after, I joined the PCUSA denomination, initially for its strong polity that holds leadership accountable. And whenever I tell people I've joined the PCUSA for its polity, they almost always laugh. Anyways, and here we are. And then I interned at an old Presbyterian church in Pennington, New Jersey. I graduated in May 21 with my MDiv and some restored faith in the institution of church. Finding safe places to serve and worship has been instrumental for me for that. I now frequently describe my faith as God holding on to me more than I've held on to God. In light of all these experiences, I've continued to humbly step forward in the ordination process, by God's grace, hoping to be the type of faithful presence for others that I've experienced in the Christian community. I long for a day when the church is widely known in our culture as a healing balm that joyfully invites others into the type of shalom community we hear Jesus describe as the kingdom of God. While I continuously discern what my next calling might be within the church, my life's work so far has always revolved around young people and finding new ways to communicate the gospel to a culture largely estranged from it. I felt particularly called to some form of healing ministry and have discerned pursuing additional training and education in counseling psychology. But for the time being, I feel called to continue through my ordination steps and to do ministry through my current role as a domestic engineer, which is my term for stay-at-home dad, and with my partner Grace and our two little ones, Sophie, who's 2, and Amelia, who's 5. Becoming a parent has meant for me growing in a deeper understanding of God's love and patience for me and the high calling of modeling that love and patience to my kids. It's a tall order, so pray for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your willingness to share with us. So now, as a reminder, we have an opportunity to ask Matt questions. And please remember that at this time, it is only appropriate to ask Matt questions about his statement of Christian experience and sense of call, not about his theology at this point. So if you have a question for Matt, please type inquiry into the chat. Oh, yes. And I believe Stephen Dietrich has been asked by the Committee on Preparation for Ministry to ask the first question. So Stephen, please go ahead and unmute, reintroduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, moderator. This is Stephen Dietrich, teaching elder, chair of the Commission on Preparation for Ministry. Matt, as your liaison, I've gotten to read your statement of Christian experience a couple of times, and did a deeper reflection on your statement in preparation for this time of questioning. And the two things that kind of surfaced for me was your statement about God holding on to me more than I've held on to God, but then also this vision statement of the church as a healing balm that joyfully invites others into a shalom community. And those really resonated with me. And of course, you dangle out there George MacDonald, so I had to read about who that was. And I stumbled on to his 1880 collection, A Book of Strife, in the form of the Diary of an Old Soul. MacDonald writes, and the unseen root clings cramp-like unto thee, depicting a desperate, tenacious hold on God. And I kind of felt that in your statement, this tenacious hold on God, even though you claim God's holding you more than you've reached out to God. I wondered if you could create a fuller picture about this relationship with God, especially as you cast the vision of a joyful invite. And as I meditated on that, I was thinking about the father and the prodigal son, where sometimes there's a cramp-like clinging, but sometimes there's also a joyful hugging. The father comes and runs to the son when he's still far off, and which is tough for an old man to do. And
I'm sorry, Stephen, what is your question?
Here's my question. So in what way do you also see God as the joyful embrace of the Father?
Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, you did like extra credit with reading George MacDonald. You know, the first thing that came to mind for me was, and something that's not in my statement is, a lot of that pain from my family experiences led me to start attending counseling when I was in college. And over time, the relationship, this is a Christian counselor, and over time, you know, as he dug into my relationship with my dad, he connected it to this ability to be intimate with God as a father. And that ended up being a really important metaphor for me, especially because my dad wasn't that safe person for me when I was a child. And so he started to invite me to, he said, sit on Papa's lap. And this idea of just being able to cozy up with God. And so at times, you know, some time has passed since then. I was 20 at the time. Now I'm 30, almost 37. So I think, you know, that metaphor for God still works for me sometimes, where I'm just like, God, I just need like a hug. I need somewhere safe and warm to be. I think it's also over the years led me to kind of pull apart the sense that I have of God. And a lot of times we take our earthly experiences or like our relational experiences and we can project those onto God. And so sometimes I find myself, I'm still having to pull those things apart sometimes. Is that what God is like? Or is that some other image I've picked up along the way? So, but I continue to return to that practice of sitting in Papa's lap, especially when times are hard or stressful. So thanks for asking that question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'll invite Scott Crane to ask his question next. Please remember to introduce yourself with your name, your ecclesial status, and church or committee.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Scott Crane. I'm a teaching elder, and I like your term, domestic engineer, and would like to just sort of ask something on that nature. I've found it incredibly helpful for me. So have you been, or are you currently regularly seeing a spiritual director in discernment of your next steps as God calls you?
Great question, Scott. I'm not currently seeing a spiritual director, but I've worked with now 3 in the past and plan to pick that up again, especially as time allows. Yeah, I would like to pursue that. But yeah, I think I've experienced it as a really helpful thing to me as well. And it's different than counseling. It's got a special kind of unique quality to it and my personal spiritual life, and I've experienced that. So yeah, thanks for the reminder. I'll put it in my notes. Mhm.
All right, I'll invite Roberta to ask the next question. Go ahead and
Good
unmute.
evening. I'm Roberta Schlechter, certified Christian educator, retired. And I just would love to hear you speak a little bit about, if you could, how would you summarize the needs and the desires of the young people that you encounter in your ministry? It sounds as though you've been in some rather specialized ministry opportunities. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Roberta. A couple stories come to mind. One was well, one thing I just want to say from the outset is I've had some really challenging experiences in my work. Like working in a group home with at-risk teens was really hard for me. I think one of the things that I really learned about young people in those settings was we can judge people so quickly based on their behavior and what they look like and their history, etc. But I remember one of the kids who ended up he on my last day of work, he stole my glasses and wouldn't give them back. But we did not have the warmest relationship for a long time. But then one night I opened up his journal for the day. That was part of our practice as the specialist. And he had this just kind of gut-wrenching prayer to God in it. And that really changed something in me. And it caused me to start looking deeper than the behaviors that were really kind of out of control and scary to me, to see the heart underneath. So I'd say, yeah, one of the things, and that's been true throughout youth ministry, sometimes the kids who have the most challenging behaviors also are carrying some of the most hurt. That's something that's been true for as long as I've worked with young people. I think if I were to speak a little bit more about like the young people I've been working with lately, I think loneliness is just like with adults is just massive for young people. And I think it's harder and harder for young people to establish relationships. We're all different ages, but if you think back to what it was like making a friend in high school, it's just different now, and it's difficult. And I think if we're thinking along the lines of like, how do we support our young people? Young people don't have mentors, less and less. They don't have mentors these days. So pray for the young people in your life. Try to sit down with them at their eye level and take interest in something they're doing, and see if you can somehow find a way to come alongside that. Because they need mentors, but it's not something that's built into many of their lives. And they need you to meet them where they're at, not where you want them to be. So, okay, that's what I have for that. I hope that answered that question. I kind of went a couple different directions,
Great. Yes, thank you. All right, I'll invite Sarah Sanderson Dowdy to unmute, introduce yourself, and ask the next question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, teaching elder at St. Andrews, Portland, and also CART lead. Thank you for your statement of your journey. I'm just curious. I imagine your experiences at the old Presbyterian church. I don't know if that's the name of it or if it was an old Presbyterian church. I'm curious about that. Probably both are true. Could be true. But I imagine it was quite a striking difference from churches in which you had participated before. And I'm wondering what was most surprising or striking to you in your experience in Pennington.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it was a weird time because it was also COVID. So I think that definitely colored my experience. I think we only had a couple services where we were actually in person in the building. So that colored my experiences. But I think just in general, that church and other Presbyterian churches that I've experienced, it feels like kind of a coming home to my earlier church experiences in the Catholic Church. Like theology is different, clearly, but the kind of the pews and the high church was very different from, Pentecostalism, where you have people sometimes waving flags in the in the sanctuary, and people getting up and out of their seats, and it's very different. So I think there's pros and cons to that for sure. But I think what I've really enjoyed about the Presbyterian Church is just how thoughtful we are in the way that we approach faith, and we don't shy away from hard questions most of the time. And I really find that to be really life-giving for me at this time. Yeah. So does that answer? Oh, and the church was not called Old Presbyterian Church. I think it was just First Pres of Pennington. Yeah. And Nancy McCoskey, I think she's still there. She was a great pastor to work with. And that was also really, really helpful to have people like Nancy to kind of help me get into another avenue of church ministry again. So yeah, thanks.
All right, I'll invite Chris Gruey to unmute and ask the next question.
Thank you, moderator. Chris Gruey, teaching elder at Savage Memorial Presbyterian Church in Portland. Matt, thank you for your statement. And my question has to do with your view of the tension between the vulnerability and the resilience of young people, and how or what place does a pastor play, what part does a pastor play in that tense time?
Thanks, Chris. That's a great question. It reminds me of a conversation I had with a dad who was volunteering in our youth group a couple of years ago. And I was walking through why I was letting them listen to music that had cuss words in it. A classic dad question. And I might be asking the same question in 10 years of the youth pastor I'm volunteering with or whatever. But I think part of the vulnerability, and what was the other word you used?
Resilience.
Resilience, yeah. I think, how did this relate? I think it relates in my mind because it's a way of meeting them where they're at. This father wanted them to be listening to clean Christian music that uplifted his soul, but clearly they were choosing to listen to different music for a reason. And so I think there's a vulnerability to young people in the sense that they don't know how to discern sometimes what to engage in. But I don't think if we're talking about a pastor coming into that space, as much as I was able to, I tried to shed this idea of coming down to them, that I know what's right and you are wrong. And so I think if we're to help them become resilient people, it's not just a matter of saying this is good, this is bad. Don't do that, do this. Instead, I think it's more entering their experience and helping them grow. So one of the songs was particularly awful, and I turned it off. And after we listened to it, I was like, okay, let's talk about what they were saying in that song and what you guys think about those values. And we had that conversation. And the way I said it to this dad was, I was like, look, these kids are listening to this music at home, at school, around their friends. If church is not somewhere we can even allow them to express themselves, then how do we expect them to be formed in church? If they can't bring themselves into the church fully, then they can't really be formed by the church either. Anyways, that's kind of I hope that related to what you asked, Chris. Yeah.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
All right, Mary Pierce, please unmute and introduce yourself and ask your question.
I'm Mary Pearson, First Presbyterian in Vancouver. I am a ruling elder. I am fascinated by this discussion because I am sitting here going, why in the world would you choose the Presbyterian Church? I was raised in a Presbyterian church from the time I was a young child. And all due respect, we're not real open and loosey-goosey. You know, we tend to be kind of rigid. And your choice leads me to ask a question here, because I have a grandson who is really exploring this, and he's 17 years old. And he is really struggling between the concepts of there is no God. Yeah, there's a God, but maybe he's different than what I think. Maybe I believe, maybe I don't. And all of this dynamic that's going on in the country right now. My question to you is, how are you thinking that you can effectively work with these young people in an environment where social media and all of the influences they have create this cloud of kind of confusion or challenge for them? How do you see yourself interfacing with them?
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for that question. I think, yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a lot of noise. We all are experiencing that noise. And so I think part of that is when you get into a room of your community, the noise tends to drop away. And so I think young people are craving community. I think we all are, and we always will. And I think part of, how do you interface with young people that are in this sort of cloud or fog or however you want to describe it? I think you listen to their story, like really lean into who they are and who they've been. You invite them to be just that in the space that you're providing for them. Okay, I'll say this quick thing. There was this catchy phrase from the 90s. I think it was about confirmation and becoming part of the church. And it was something like believe, belong, become. And I tend to think that if we're putting belief at the beginning for young people, we've already lost them, because like you said, it's a really big hurdle. There's a lot of things that make them not believe. So instead, I think we let them belong and we let them start to become, and then the fruit of their life shows them, oh wow, there's like something going on here. I don't really understand all of it, and there are certainly doubts, but I'm seeing that God is somehow showing up in my life, in the beauty of this community, etc. So I think that's kind of what I would say to somebody who's trying to form a Christian community for young people. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you all. We have reached the 15-minute limit for the examination, so the examination is now closed. Matt, thank you very much for your thoughtful and honest answers. We really appreciate that. Will the tech team please place Matt and Clark Sclair in a breakout room?
Did you see that motion?
Yeah.
But you've already closed it.
Okay, we're working on the breakout room. The joys of technology.
Where did Matt go?
Sorry, friends, I can't spell very well.
Okay, it looks like Matt is in the breakout room. We're hoping that Clark is with him to keep him company. I will now recognize the CPM chair again to make the official motion. Stephen, do you want to unmute, please?
The CPM recommends and requests that the Presbytery of the Cascades, after hearing and interviewing him on his statement of Christian experience, enroll Matt Heisler as a candidate under care of the Presbytery.
Thank you. The motion is on the floor to advance Matt from inquiry to candidacy, and it does come from a commission, so it does not need a second. I see Brad Kent with your hand raised. Are you intending to seek recognition, or is that okay? I can't quite tell. If you could type into the chat if you wish to speak, that would be excellent. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and that is to vote to enroll Matt Heisler as a candidate under the care of the Presbytery. And as a reminder for our discussion on this motion, if you wish to speak in favor for it, to seek recognition to speak in favor, type 4, to speak against, type against. A question about the motion or parliamentary process, type inquiry. And if you have a motion, please type motion and the text of your motion in the chat. So is there anyone who wishes to speak to the motion to enroll Matt as a candidate under care? I see Bill Humphreys with an inquiry. Is your inquiry about the motion?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
Right.
I'm relatively new in the Presbytery, but not to the system. I'm wondering, given Matt's age and process through his education, what does it mean now for a timeline for him to be under care? Is he still required to be under care for a year or more? Will he be allowed to seek employment, to seek a call, that kind of thing? Thank you.
Would the chair of the CPM or our stated clerk wish to speak to that?
Moderator, I'll do my best. According to our CPM manual, in the candidacy stage, when one becomes a candidate, you remain a candidate for 1 year. I don't believe that's an impediment to Matt at this time, but that's my understanding.
All right, I see Scott Crane who wishes to speak for. You may unmute, introduce yourself, and say your statement.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Scott Crane, teaching elder on the COM, currently between churches, minister at large. I speak in favor of enrolling Matt as a candidate. I also wish to offer to the CPM their financial support of him as a domestic engineer to undergo spiritual direction as he seeks his next steps. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. I see Greg who has a question. Greg, you may unmute and ask your question.
No question, just support from Lake Grove Presbyterian Church, at least through my words. Having worked with Matt for 3 years, I've always been impressed with him. I've never been more impressed with him than this evening, so I support the motion.
All right, thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else seeking recognition. I'll give just a few moments more. Again, please type in the chat if you wish to speak. Okay, since it doesn't appear that anyone else is seeking recognition, the debate is now closed and we will proceed to the vote. We are again voting on the motion to enroll Matt Heisler as a candidate under the care of our presbytery, and we will be voting using the Zoom poll, which will appear on your screen in just a moment. When it appears, those of you who are in favor of enrolling Matt as a candidate, please select yes. If you oppose such a move, please select no. And after you make your selection, please be sure to click the submit button at the bottom of the poll. All right, will the tech team please display the poll? And please make your selections now.
I believe that's a different poll.
Yes. Good call. Okay, so we will pause voting. Just a second, we will redo this. Will the tech team please try the poll again?
Sorry, folks, I have lost the poll. There is a poll that says adopt motion, but that's the one that had something else. I suggest we try this by unanimous consent.
Okay. All right, so if we vote by unanimous consent, it essentially means that without objection, we approve the motion. So if anyone objects and wishes to vote against enrolling Matt Heisler as a candidate, please type object into the chat box now. Okay, seeing none, our body has unanimously consented to enrolling Matt as a candidate. We will invite him back in just a second. And again, once we do, and we're sure he's back in the room, I will invite you all to add notes of affirmation in the chat. So we will invite Matt to return now. Let's see. I can't see.
Okay, I'll tell you when they're back.
They're coming back. Let's see. Waiting for them. Let's see. Matt, is Matt there?
I'm here.
It looks like you are. Congratulations. The Presbytery has voted indeed to advance you to candidacy. And I will now invite everyone to offer notes of encouragement, affirmation, and blessing in the chat for Matt. So since applause doesn't work very well, we thought we would try this instead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, letting me share.
Congratulations, and thank you again for sharing your story with us. All right, I will now invite the chair of the CPM to return and introduce our next candidate.
Laura Fuller. On December 10th, 2025, the CPM met with inquirer Laura Fuller and conducted an annual review. Additionally, after discussing her growth objectives and her progress, articulating and demonstrating the outcomes of inquiry, the CPM voted to approve the following motion. The CPM recommends and requests that the Presbytery of the Cascades, after hearing and interviewing her on her statement of Christian experience, enroll Laura Fuller as a candidate under care of the Presbytery.
Thank you. So the process will proceed in just the same way. We will begin by hearing Laura read her statement of Christian experience. Then we will ask Laura questions about her experience. And then after 15 minutes, at the limit of 15 minutes, we will excuse her to a breakout room and again discuss and vote on whether to enroll her as a candidate. And then at that point, we will proceed and continue as the motion decides. So Laura, I invite you to unmute and read to us your statement.
Great. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Matt, congratulations. All right. My Christian faith has been a journey of encountering God's nearness, sovereignty, and relational love. I was raised in a Christian household where the stories and central figures of the Bible were familiar to me from an early age, and my belief took root young. And by the age of 9, I'd embraced faith, been baptized, and felt a sense of belonging within the church. Yet as I grew, my focus shifted inward. So from my early teens into young adulthood, I intentionally stepped away, choosing independence and self-direction over deeper spiritual life. As I neared 20, I began to experience moments of quiet but persistent mental nudging, an unmistakable sense of God trying to get my attention, of being beckoned. God was faithful, even when I could not be. I took tentative steps forward, even while still resisting the changes I sensed were being asked of me. I knew God was calling me to be obedient, and that was something that made me balk. When I realized I would soon be responsible for the upbringing of another human, my internal focus shifted because there was more at stake than my own faith. So becoming a mother was a real turning point. I continued to take steps toward and with God, sometimes at an ambling pace, others at a sprint. And sometimes, frankly, I tripped and fell and had to stop and rest for a while. But again, God is faithful and he continued to show me the way. The path he revealed was not always one I had expected, and he often asked me to trust his directions, even though I couldn't see much more than just a few feet ahead of me. He taught me about patient endurance, a refrain that frankly angered me at first. And now, having lived into it for 2+ decades, it's become a bit of an anthem for me. God has a path and a plan, and with patient endurance, frankly, sometimes with more patience than others, I seek to let God direct my way. And part of this journey was transitioning from being a middle school teacher, something that very much felt like a calling and a gift as a single mom, to turning my focus towards seminary and moving towards a life of full-time ministry. And as I'm sure many of you can agree with, time in seminary was a season of significant expansion of my heart, of my mind, kind of a spiritual renaissance, as though my understanding of faith, God, and spiritual life had been confined to just a little small space and was suddenly opened wide. And I began to grasp a sense of the vastness of God, the bigness of God, I like to say, and to see the many ways I could know him and encounter him. I learned that productivity does not define my spiritual life, and that, quote, wasting time with God in prayer, reflection, and contemplation has inherent value. Through both ordinary and extraordinary experiences, God has repeatedly shown faithfulness in answered prayers, unexpected guidance, the presence of friends and mentors, and the ways everyday life bears glimpses of God's care. I have been learning to watch and listen for God in the rhythms of daily life, to notice the small ways God calls, comforts, and shapes me. This reshaped my sense of discipleship and deepened my joy in exploring spiritual practices, from Visio Divina to creative engagement with Scripture, which I have enjoyed sharing with those that I serve. My ministry has grown naturally out of these experiences through teaching, preaching, small group leadership, staff support, and types of pastoral care. I find deep fulfillment in walking alongside people of all ages as faith develops over time, and in witnessing the ways relationships and community nurture growth. My years of teaching and working with families have shaped my attentiveness to the wide range of human experience, and I'm committed to ministry that honors diversity, curiosity, and different ways of learning and belonging. Hospitality, inclusion, and compassion remain central to how I approach leadership and service. And my time at Lake Grove Presbyterian Church has been formative, offering experiences that continue to shape me into a more thoughtful and grounded leader. I seek ordained ministry because of a persistent sense that this is the work that I am meant to do. It reflects both the gifts that I've been given and the joy that I experience in teaching, guiding, and accompanying others through life's questions and transitions. And I understand this vocation as a response, shaped in community and expressed through service, and as an ongoing process of growth and learning. This work allows me to engage the realities of being human through a lens of faith, guiding others toward Jesus and helping them recognize the fingerprints of God in their own lives and the transformation that brings. I'm committed to ongoing learning and formation, trusting the Spirit to shape me, and to participate fully in God's work in the world alongside the people of God, places around me, and remaining attentive to the daily ways God shows faithfulness, how he calls and equips us for life and ministry.
Thank you, Laura. All right, we will now have time for questions. And a reminder, again, at this time, it is only appropriate to ask Laura questions about her statement of Christian experience and her sense of call, not about her theology at this point in time. I believe the CPM has arranged for Cynthia Lewis Younger to ask the first question, so I will invite her to unmute and ask the first question, and anyone else who wishes to ask questions after that, you may please indicate so by typing inquiry into the chat. Cynthia.
Thank you. Cynthia Lewis Younger. I'm a ruling elder and serving on the Commission for Preparation for Ministry. And it's my pleasure to be Laura's liaison. It's been a wonderful experience. And we've talked a good bit about her time at Lake Grove. So, Laura, I would just ask that you talk a little bit more, expand on how your experiences and your service at Lake Grove has confirmed your calling.
Yeah. I came to Lake Grove just as a congregant at first, and soon became involved in the life of the church through working with the children's ministry. And not long after that, I had an opportunity to join their team. So my role into Lake Grove has been, was kind of slow in some ways, but very sweet. As my current role is lead director of discipleship, I get to work with all ages. Right now, I get to work with the youth a whole lot as we're in between youth directors. I help to lead some of the small groups for the women. I get to participate in worship leadership, and it has been such an experience of joy. There's so many things that I get to do right now that I didn't think I was going to get to do for a long time until, officially, ordained. But I have a lot of folks that are supporting me, a lot of staff that is well seasoned and experienced that are offering wisdom. It has been a real confirmation that this is the work that I feel called to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia.
All right, I'll invite Jeff to unmute and ask the next question.
Thank you for your statement, Laura.
Yeah.
I'm Jeff Sievert, honorably retired and parish associate at the Multnomah Presbyterian Church. Your first sentence is a really good theme sentence for your whole presentation, it seems. And I'm fascinated by your collecting nearness, sovereignty, and relational. That's almost Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which I think is brilliant. And some of us tend to lean more towards sovereignty, or we lean more toward nearness. There's the God of everything, and then there's the God who finds me a parking spot in the lot. Can you say a little bit more about that, how that sovereignty and nearness,
Yeah.
how you've experienced that with God?
Yeah, I think part of it stems from the fact that I really like thinking about Trinity. Like it's always been a point of interest for me. Even as a kid, it just kind of blew my mind. It's three, but it's one. It's three, but it's one. And so leaning into understanding each of the different parts of Trinity has been part of what's expanded my understanding of who God is. And not just who God is, but how God relates to me, how God relates to you, and how I can then in turn respond. There's different pieces of God that I feel that I am drawn to in different seasons of life. The times when it's so hard and I just need to feel God's presence. The times when I need to know that God's in charge, God's on the throne, in the midst of some of the horrors that we see and witness, whether those are ones that we collectively witness as communities or the ones that are more personal, but knowing that God is in charge. And then that relational piece, that God's not distant. I mean, that the relational and nearness really do intertwine. And that God is seeking us. And that is something I can be confident about for every person that I'm interacting with, and can then communicate to them that God is seeking them. So I love that God is so diverse in this way, because everybody has a point of access.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, I'll invite David to unmute and ask the next question.
Thank you, Laura, for your wonderful presence with us tonight. It's exciting to just have to enjoy your statement of experience.
Thanks, David.
My name is David Jewell. I'm a teaching elder, not a member at large, and I'm serving on the board of trustees right at the moment. I hear the word teacher a lot in in your experience. And
yeah.
I wonder if you could, that's exciting enough, but could you share a little bit about your notion of what a teacher is and what a teacher is called to do?
That's a great question, because I've had both the secular application of teacher and, the more, church faith oriented experience of teacher. And there's honestly a lot of overlap. I mean, there's the words that get to come out of my mouth are really the things that get to change. It's a lot about asking questions of the people that you are with. It's being a facilitator, giving people these kind of curated experiences to meet whatever learning objective, you will, that we're trying to hit toward. It's supposed to be a safe place for asking questions of whatever it is that we're studying and we're looking into. It's a place for collaboration. It's not something that's done by oneself. And I think that all of these things are true, whether it was when I was in the classroom teaching, squirrely 7th and 8th graders, or whether it's when I've got, a room of 35 women or, a bunch of youth, or it's teaching is in my soul. And so getting to talk to people about the things that matter most, I think that's the biggest difference in the teaching that I experienced as a public educator and now. And one of the things that had moved me towards wanting to change, when students would come and talk to me about the terrible things that they will come and talk to you about, I wasn't able to talk to them about the thing that I thought mattered most and would make the biggest difference in their life. And I get to do that now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
All right, I'll invite Susan Graham to unmute and ask the next question.
Thank you. Susan Graham, teaching elder, Lake Grove. Laura, you had a beautiful image in your statement of Christian experience of God beckoning you.
Yeah.
How have you seen the beckoning of God maybe shift or change what you described in the beginning, and then how God beckons you now?
That's a great question. In that section where I'm talking about feeling God beckoning me, it was almost like a physical tap, like being able to, and God wasn't taking no for an answer. God was persistent. And I remember sitting up in bed because it was mostly at night as I was trying to fall asleep. I was like, fine, that was it. And that is the moment where things began to shift. I think that because I've learned to trust God's guidance over the years, that the beckoning feels, not that it wasn't friendly initially, but like it feels friendly. It feels like an invitation. It's something that is a common practice. It's not an unusual thing. And it's something that I've been able to notice more. And it happens, I think, through repeated ideas and topics that come up. It comes through senses of, oh, you guys know, right? Those senses of peace and stillness. It lacks that nervous agitation where God is pointing me. I'm sure it will continue to evolve. So continuing to pay attention to God's lead. Thanks for that, Susan.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll invite Scott Crane to unmute and ask the next question.
Well, thank you for that, Madam Moderator, and thank you, Laura, for your wonderful statement. A couple of things jumped out at me in the midst of it, which I think the last two folks asked in another way, and you already answered, but I'm just going to try anyway. So one of the things that jumped out at me from your statement was at one point you said, quote, wasting time with God.
Yeah.
And my heart went, ouch, that must have been something negative at some point in your past. And so my question, I had missed some of the things you were saying because my brain was going there. And,
sure.
And so I was like, well, you're obviously here now and you're pursuing ministry. So you've found enough of something in community to counter negative critique. But how might you do that as a pastor to others who are experiencing negative critique?
Yeah. So I guess that phrase can be seen a couple different ways. For me, the wasting time with God was not so much that I was wasting my time on pursuing God, but rather that I had to be busy about it, that I had to be reading, I had to be writing, I had to be answering questions. It needed to be academic, like, because that was how I understood what people were trying to teach me of how you have an active relationship with God and the scripture. And so that's the wasting time that I was like, you know what? It's okay if I just sit quietly with God. I don't even have to say anything. I'm just sitting in his presence. And that's something that I have definitely implemented in the way I've worked with specifically the women's groups that I've been working with. At the end of most every Bible study that we have, there's a time of reflection, and women are invited, yes, to write, but they're also invited to just sit in God's presence in quiet for those few minutes. From the other interpretation of that, the wasting time with God that you're asking, like, how would you encourage people that it's not a waste of time? Is that what you were asking? Yeah.
Yes.
I think the best way to do that starts with just the relationship between me and the person. I think, Matt sort of alluded to it with that sense of belonging first, that people are drawn to communities of faith as places to be seen and be known. And through that, they come to see that it's so much more, that there's so much more to it. They are not typically coming because they want me to answer on the first day, the big questions. They want to know that I remember their name from the week before. They want to be known, whether that's the 6-year-old, the 16-year-old, the 60-year-old, or the 106-year-old. They're all wanting that belonging. So I think it begins with relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
All right, Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, you may unmute and ask the next question.
Thanks, Madam Moderator, and thanks, Laura. Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, teaching elder at St. Andrews and cart leader. I just want to invite you to tell a short story. You talk about seminary being a time of spiritual renaissance. And tell us one story from your seminary experience where you felt like you were experiencing that rebirth.
Yeah. There were 2 books in particular. So a lot of this happened through the reading that I was doing. I was studying remotely, and so it was me engaging with a lot of texts, whether it was modern voices or voices from the past. And 2 more modern books really helped shape my understanding of who I could be as a person of faith, who God really was. As I continue to, I say that, we can't have that definition totally worked out right now, but we do our best. And that was David Benner's Gift of Being Yourself. And I'm going to forget his name. It starts with an M, but it's Invitation to a Journey. starts with an M, his last name. But there was this one image specifically in that book where it talks about how God keeps bringing us to the top of the hill. And Mulholland, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Robin. As we get to the top of the hill and we look out and we think we've arrived, and yet what we see is this broad expanse of more hills, kind of like what Lewis and Clark saw, right? When they got to the top. There's my social studies teacher for you. And that is, I found that both encouraging and also, it truly was like a revelation. Like I was like, oh, this is how God does it. This is the journey that we are being invited into. So that's one of those, that was one of those moments. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you. We thank you all for your great questions. Laura, thank you for all your great and thoughtful answers. But we have reached the 15-minute limit for the examination, so our examination is now closed. I will invite the tech team to place Laura and Clark in a waiting room, a breakout room, not waiting room. I'll give just a second for the technology. Thank you again, Laura.
My pleasure. That was fun. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, so I will now again invite our chair of the CPM to officially make the motion. Stephen, you may unmute.
The CPM recommends and requests that the Presbytery of the Cascades, after hearing and interviewing her on her statement of Christian experience, enroll Laura Miller as a candidate under care of the Presbytery.
Thank you. So the motion is to enroll Laura Fuller as a candidate under care of the Presbytery. It does come from a commission, so it does not need a second. I will invite people to indicate whether they wish to speak to the motion by either typing for or against in the chat. If you have a question about the motion or the process, please type inquiry. Or if you wish to make another motion or amendment, please post motion and the text. I will invite Susan Graham to unmute and speak on behalf of the motion.
Thank you, Susan Graham, teaching elder Lake Grove. I do speak very much in favor of advancing Laura in this next step. I've gotten to work closely with her and see the impact she has on people and drawing them into a beautiful and deep relationship with Christ. I am really touched by both today. I know I'm in a moment speaking of Laura, but from Matt as well, of the way the Lord has worked so deeply in their lives and the way that they both can communicate that to others. Very much in favor for advancing Laura here. Thank you.
Thank you. I will invite Chris to speak. Chris Murphy.
Hi, everyone. Chris Murphy, teaching elder, Newburgh First Presbyterian Church, and chair of your PLC. I had the privilege of having Laura as a ministry intern at Newburgh First Presbyterian, where she was able to preach and lead our youth and family ministries and do adult formation and lead some retreats. She has tremendous gifts in spiritual formation. She did lead Visio Divina for us, which was really fun. She even led a Bob Ross paint night where we all did some painting together, which was a lot of fun. She's just super creative. Everything you saw from her today was something you really pick up deeply in her faith journey as you walk with her and journey with her. And that she's now ready to move into candidacy is a great joy for all of us who know her well. So I encourage us to move forward with her and moving her to candidacy.
Thank you, Chris. I will invite Kathy Keener to speak. Please unmute and introduce yourself.
I'm Kathy Keener. I am State and Supply Pastor at Newport First Pres. And I'm a teaching elder, yes. I find that Laura is beautifully prepared. Her experiences have her at a point of peaking before she ever gets close to, to ordination. But I want to speak as a testimonial piece to how I was personally touched tonight just listening to her and being able to go along with her journeys and places where she's touched and recognize places within my own journey where that happened. I find her to be a skilled teacher and learner, and I strongly affirm her being continued into candidacy.
Thank you. We've heard a few people to speak in favor. Is there anybody to speak opposed to our motion? All right, seeing nobody seeking further recognition, debate is closed and we will proceed to our vote. I believe our tech team has solved the issue of the Zoom poll, so we will try that again. In just a moment, the motion will appear on your screen in the poll, and if you wish to vote in favor of the motion, which is to enroll Laura as a candidate under care of the Presbytery, you will click yes. If you wish not to do so, you will click no, and in both cases, please be sure to click the submit button at the bottom of the poll. All right, will the tech team please try to show the poll this time? All right, it appears to be the correct motion. Again, the motion is to enroll Laura Fuller as a candidate under care of the Presbytery. Please make your selections now. The poll will be closing momentarily, so if you have not yet made your selection, please do so swiftly. All right, the poll will now be closed, and I will invite the stated clerk to declare the number of votes for and against.
Moderator, there were 111 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Wonderful. All right, the poll is carried. The motion is adopted, and Laura Fuller will be enrolled as a candidate. And we'll invite our tech team to invite her and Clark to return. And please wait until I say, make sure she's here, but please have your comments of affirmation and ready. All right.
Yeah,
Is
one of the
Laura-
challenges is that when you put something in the chat and someone's not in the room, they can't see it until they come back. Like they can't look back in the record. So that's why I ask you to wait.
Yeah. All right, Laura, are you here? Have you returned?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hooray! Congratulations. It is my great pleasure to tell you that we voted unanimously to advance you to candidacy. And just as we did with Matt, everyone has been invited to offer notes of encouragement and affirmation in the chat. So please be sure to see those there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we are now going to offer a prayer for both of our candidates. So Laura and Matt, if you could both unmute and say hello. So we have you early, so everyone can see where you are in the midst of our screen. So
Here
I
I
can
am.
see Laura, but how about Matt? Matt, where are you? I think we're trying to figure out if we know how to pin them so they will show up. Is Matt still here? Let's see. Matt. Oh no, he probably went to. All right, he might have had to go. So anyway, Laura, we will pray for you, and we will pray for Matt remotely.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm sure prayers still work just as well. So Laura, and we will pass this along to Matt as well. You both have been advanced to candidacy in preparation for ministry. So hear now this promise of God spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. Laura, on behalf of the Presbytery, I will now ask you the candidacy question. So you are unmuted and you may answer. So do you believe yourself to be called by God to the ministry of Word and Sacrament? Do you?
I do.
And do you promise, in reliance upon the grace of God, to maintain a Christian character and conduct and to be diligent and faithful in making full preparation for this ministry? Do you?
I do.
And do you accept the proper supervision of the presbytery in matters that concern your preparation for this ministry? Do you?
I do.
In the words of 2 Timothy, may you hold to the standard of sound teaching that you may have heard from us in the faith and love that are in Christ Jesus. Guard the good treasure entrusted to you with the help of the Holy Spirit that is living in all of us. Now let us all pray. God of prophets and apostles, you have chosen leaders to train your people in the way of Jesus Christ. We thank you that in our day, you are still claiming women and men for special work within the church. As Laura and Matt as well have dedicated themselves to you, let us, as the people of this presbytery, pledge ourselves to them, so that surrounded by affection and hope, they may grow in wisdom, mature in love, and become faithful workers approved by Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Laura. And may God continue to bless and guide you on your discernment journey.
Thank you.
All right, as we move towards the close of our meeting, I will ask the stated clerk, do we have any unfinished business?
None at all, moderator.
Excellent. All right, so that brings us to our moderator's report, and I just have a lot of thank yous to say. So thank you to all of our meeting leaders and presenters for your good work this evening. Thank you to Paul, our stated clerk, for his many efforts to prepare and keep us organized in advance and during this meeting as well. I'd also like to offer special thanks to Danny, Sherry, and Gail, who are all serving as our tech team tonight, for their efforts to keep all of the behind the scenes details running smoothly. And most of all, thank you to you. Thank you for making the effort and time to be here tonight, for participating thoughtfully in our discussion and deliberation, and for your persistence with us, even though we are a little overscheduled tonight. So with that, thank you. And that concludes my report. I will now invite the Reverend Paul Bells Templeman, the stated clerk, to offer his stated clerk's report.
Thank you, moderator. Paul Bells Templeman, stated clerk, 80%. And I think I got 80% of my tasks done tonight during this meeting. Apologies about the polls and a few other things. I am very grateful to moderator Margaret Mitsuyasu, who has done such great work, and it's been a pleasure to work with her, putting together the script for the meeting, and being here with moderator-elect Gail Black and our communication person. What are you? Communication expert, Danny. And I do want to allow Clark Scalera to make an announcement right now that touches on all of us. I yield my time to Clark.
All right, Clark.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Paul. One item that I neglected to mention in my report was to share a bit of news that I think is important in the life of the presbytery. Reverend Dr. Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, who has been serving as both the pastor at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Portland and also as our COM team leader for conflict resolution, has recently been offered a new call outside of our region, and she'll be leaving our presbytery in mid-February. And since this will be her last presbytery meeting with us as a member, I did want us just to take a moment to pause to acknowledge her wonderful and critical years of service on the presbytery staff, and also thank her for all the ways that she's been such a good friend and colleague in ministry in our midst. So Sarah, we really sincerely thank you. We are so grateful for you and hope that you know that you go forth with our gratitude, our prayers, and our enduring friendship. And while there isn't really an ideal feature on Zoom, there are hearts and hands clapping and chats, but we don't have a great way to say goodbye in this online setting. I hope you all, as individuals that make up the Presbytery of the Cascades that know Sarah, that you'll reach out to her in the coming weeks and just send a note via text or email or in the old-fashioned mail to wish her well in her next call and send her forth with your blessing. Sarah, always remember the Presbyterian world is small, and so we do look forward to staying connected and bumping into you at General Assembly and other fun Presbyterian gatherings. You are sincerely appreciated, and you will be missed. Thank you.
Oh, yes, we definitely will. But we will send God's blessings with you, Sarah. All right, we have reached the end of our business for this meeting, so I will invite you to close with me in prayer. Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, we give you thanks for the work that we have shared today, for reports that told the truth of our lives together, for careful questions and faithful answers, and for those who step forward in trust as we listen for your call upon their lives, and for those we are sending forward to continue your work in other places too. As we leave this place, may you gather everything that we have said and done into your larger purpose. Grant us rest where we are tired, courage where decisions continue to weigh on us, and joy in the knowledge that your Spirit is at work among us even now. Send us out in peace, attentive to your leading, and grateful for one another. Amen. Thank you all. Go in peace.